Oh my lordy, it's been a long time since I've heard this tune. Welcome to the first day of Z Memories with a series that is near and dear to my heart, and perhaps the very first PC visual novel I ever played, Tsukihime. Z Memories, for those who have missed the announcement video, is a series where I look back at some of my personal experiences with visual novels. Tsukihime is the first visual novel made by Nasu, a name you might not recognize off the bat, however you are more than likely familiar with the other series he created, the Fate franchise. 14 years ago, the only way you probably ever heard of Fate outside the visual novel was through the okay Studio Dean adaptation of the Fate route. Nowadays though, Fate has exploded into mainstream popularity, with an exceedingly popular mobile game, manga, light novels, like over 6 different spin-offs, and a new anime adaptation made by the highly venerated Ufotable Studios, a name now almost synonymous with exceedingly beautiful animation. However, before Nasu went to work on all that, he created Tsukihime. Well, actually, I guess he first wrote the light novel series Kaoru no Kyokai, then after that created Tsukihime with Takeuchi, but close enough. It might just be the huge nostalgia goggles I have on, but I've always really loved Tsukihime. Probably more so than his much more popular visual novel Fate Stay Night. Something about the vampires, the weird superpowers each character has, was just more interesting to me than what the Fate did with the servants based on legendary heroes. How I got into Tsukihime, and I suppose visual novels as a whole, was actually not through Tsukihime itself. For those who don't know, while I do enjoy visual novels, I'm actually more of a JRPG, SRPG, action, fighting, adventure, basically a video game enthusiast as a whole. How I first heard of Tsukihime was actually through the spin-off doujin fighting game known as Melty Blood. It was relatively popular a long time ago, and you can actually still buy it on Steam under Melty Blood Actress Again current code. A mouthful, I know. All the extra subtitles are because each major update to the arcade title came with a new subtitle. It acts as a continuation to Tsukihime and its actual sequel, Kagetsu Toya. In Melty Blood, all the characters of Tsukihime are present, with their personalities kind of exaggerated. When I first heard that Melty Blood had an original parent story, it got me interested in checking it out, and well, here I am. As this ain't a visual novel primer, I'll just give the most basic summary of the story. Main character Shikitono is a high school boy, normal in most aspects except that he has the mystical eyes of death perception, which allows him to see the lines that makes up a person's existence, and by cutting it, remove their existence. As it pretty much would drive any human insane looking at these lines all day, he wears glasses that steal his power, given to him by Aoko Aozaki, successor to the fifth magic, and the main character Nasu's third work, Maho Tsukai no Yoru, which allows him to live a more normal life. Upon coming home one day, he meets a lady whom awakens something inside of him, and proceeds to slice her into ribbons. When he wakes up, he assumes it's a nightmare, but the next day he finds the vampire he sliced, Arucade, waiting for him, thus bringing him into a world he never knew existed. There's a lot I really like about Tsukihime. It was my first taste of what a visual novel could be. How, unlike say a linear game, the story could change depending on the choices I made. How enforced route order could portray a real interesting way to unravel a story. Beyond the mechanics of it though, the story itself was solid and intriguing. Having the game start out with the main character murdering a lady seemingly out of nowhere, only to have her reappear, it's definitely an attention grabber. Another note I really enjoyed about Tsukihime was their willingness to tackle some hard-hitting topics. Considering 2008, I was playing stuff like Resident Evil 4 and Sonic Adventure 2, which I mean yes, they're good games, but the plot wasn't anything mind-blowing. Story was more in line of Saturday morning cartoons or like B-movies. Gameplay was usually more the focus and story kind of in the backseat. For Tsukihime, however, story was front and center, and it threw me for a loop. The whole Kohaku Hisui situation, I haven't seen those kind of topics in games at the time. The willingness of visual novels to cover any topic imaginable, without regards to worries about appealing to a mass market, was a refreshing change. I look forward to not knowing where the story planned to go next. I enjoyed all the world building Nasu put into Tsukihime, about the vampires, true ancestors, different forms of magic theory, the church, executors. Honestly, a very ridiculous but fun world that Nasu had created. It also helps that the vampires themselves aren't the run-of-the-mill seen in American media, but instead all have crazy superpowers that are unique in a way only Japan can do. Tsukihime was also my first taste of the horrible trend present in most visual novels. And that is where the author stuffs quite horrible and completely out of place 18+ content in visual novels, in order to entice readers to play their game on the premise of boobs. Nasa in particular was quite famous for writing just awful 18+ fanfiction levels of smut that sounds incredibly stilted and terrible to read. Yes, it's also present in his most famous work, Fate Stay Night. There's a whole history as to why this is the case, but that's for another time. At this point, I would like to state a minor spoiler warning. I'm going to talk about some things that aren't direct spoilers, but if you're at all interested in playing Tsukihime, just go stop the video and go play it. It's good. The story still holds up to this day. Sure, the art style is kind of dated, but it holds up a hell of a lot better than, say, canon. If you enjoy Fate, you'll probably enjoy Tsukihime. Alright, with this new section, I'm gonna change the music up, because as much as I enjoyed this visual novel, outside of the main theme of the game, the BGMs are pretty terrible in Tsukihime. Luckily, we have some sweet Melty Blood music, so you know, let me just go switch it up a little bit, and there we go. Ah, that's much better. Let me start out by saying Kohaku is best girl, and I make that statement after seeing all of Tsukihime, Carnival Phantasm, and Melty Blood. Granted, my perception is most definitely colored by just how insanely batshit crazy and fun she is in Melty Blood. She's basically a super energetic mad scientist in those games. Shiki Tono is also a great main character, especially when you compare, say, Emiya from Fate. Shiki from the very first route you play is pretty likable. He's just an honest, kind-hearted guy who wants to live his life normally, and reacts to the events of the game in a way any of us might. Yet he still has a great deal of mystery to unravel, like what's with his fainting episodes. Why can't he see the lines of death? Why does he murder Aruke at the start of the game? Emi, on the other hand, is kind of a dumbass, especially in the first route the game forces you to play in Fate. There's probably a reason why Ufotable chose to adapt Unlimited Blade Works rather than the Fate route like Studio Dean did. Emiya is portrayed that way on purpose, but yeah, it's terrible and probably a story for another day. Tsukihime has 5 love interests, and consequently, 5 routes to go through. There was a 6th one planned for Satsuki, but got cut and was never added in later. What's great about these 5 routes is that each route isn't simply a new girl for Shiki to bone in an H scene near the end, but rather presents a different conflict that Shiki has to face, with major changes between who are Shiki's allies, who are his enemies, and who the main antagonist is for the route. Arcade Brunstead is really fun to follow. She's upbeat, nonchalant, and absurdly powerful. Her personality really complements Shiki's initially reserved temperament. Sail is, her abilities are cool, like the black keys, the crazy church weaponry she pulls out. But the kind of character she is, that serious glasses girl, not a fan. And her route itself was probably my least favorite out of the bunch. I don't care how much they meme about how much she loves curry, it doesn't make her a good character. Akiha, Shiki's sister, is a hit or miss, but I'd say she's probably one of the more interesting characters in the game, and one much of the plot ends up centered on. As for the remaining 2, Hisui is great and Kohaku is the best girl. Okay, that was super short because going any deeper on any of these 3 characters I feel ends up with massive spoilers, which I will get into, but first I'd like to give a chance for anyone who's come this far to back out if you haven't already played it. Everyone interested gone? Okay. Let me just say that, god dang, the big reveal at the end of Hisui's route, where you find out that the bright and cheerful Kohaku was actually the quiet girl who was locked up, abused, and used as a tool by Akiha's father this entire time, was a hard hitter. Doesn't help that Kohaku has also been secretly planning the Tono family's downfall throughout most of the routes. Granted, if I play Tsukihime now, I feel like I'd probably see this coming a mile away. 1, cause I'm jaded as all hell nowadays after reading so many visual novels with twists. But mostly 2, anytime a twin is present in a visual novel, it's usually that way for a reason like this. It blew my mind way back then though. What was pretty cool this time around was that Kohaku ends up as essentially the main antagonist for Hisui's route. What's more nuts, however, is that this unlocks her route right after, which I think makes for a really great cathartic moment when Shiki returns the ribbon he received from her when they were children, revealing that he knows it was her back then and not Hisui, as opposed to what happens in every other route. Probably the highlight of the game, in my opinion, was that moment, as opposed to the moment that happened right after that where they boned. A happy ending for this girl who suffered all this time was really great to see. From a dramatic standpoint, Hisui's route is probably better, since a huge part of it is learning the drama of the twin switching and Kwaku's secret plan, but sometimes you just can't beat a happy ending, especially after all that nonsense Shiki and Kwaku had to go through. I thought the whole idea of Shiki having a hidden personality known as Nanaya from his demon hunting training before he got his memory wiped is pretty cool. And his appearance as Death with the binding bandages in the novel sequel thing is 100% what Chunibyo wet dreams are made out of. I obviously didn't talk about every aspect of Tsukihime, but just what I enjoyed about it. There's still more to the universe and its relation to Fate Stay Night, Kara no Kyokai, the sequel Kagetsu Toya, and Melty Blood, which continues the story in a different way. There's also the remake, which got announced many years ago and never came out, and which you're seeing footage of right now. If you want to hear more about any of that, just tell me down in the comments and I might make a video about it after Z Memories finishes. And that should wrap up the first day of Z Memories. If you enjoyed the video, the like button is there as always. And do subscribe if you want to keep up with the next one coming out real soon. Twitter handle will be on the center of the end screen. I know I haven't posted on it in a while, but now that I'm back, it should see some action again. Here's a teaser for day 2, where we'll be talking about the first visual novel I ever completed in Japanese. If you missed last week's video announcement of what Z Memories is, it's on top in case you want to refresh yourselves. On the bottom will be something interesting, and with that, I'll see you next time on day 2.